I normally talk about fantasy books on this channel, character studies, analysis videos, discussions, reviews, but today we're going to be counting down my 10 favorite sci-fi books. Obviously, SFF, science fiction and fantasy, they go hand in hand. There's a lot of crossover between the readers, and they're generally viewed upon by the larger world as one and the same. I do consider myself a fan of sci-fi, but not a die-hard fan of sci-fi. So there's quite a few science fiction books that I haven't read, especially a lot of the newer, hipper ones that I see a lot of people talking about. You know, at least for the last couple of years, people have been yapping about these books here that I have not read. Some of them I want to read, some of them I don't, and I also haven't read a few classic science fiction books that at this point I have to wonder if I'm just actively ignoring reading them. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to confront that within my subconscious at some point. But I'm not an expert in science fiction. Actually, let me take this opportunity to give you a great revelation, honestly. I know you might think I'm an expert, but I'm not. About anything, honestly. I'm not about anything. I'm not an expert on anything. I know a lot about movies. Yeah. Behind me, there's just a bunch of old movie posters. Look, I got a freaking "It Happened One Night" poster. I have a "Children of Paradise" poster. Shit. Let's remind the world how cultured I am. 1 second. Well, if anyone's going, it's House on Haunted Hill. I've been wanting to do this for a little while now. At least get like one classic film up there. Oh, Claudette Colbert, Marry Me. Clark Gable too, if you're up for a thruple. Nothing to do with science fiction at all. Okay, I believe what I was saying was I don't claim to be an expert in anything. I don't think anyone views me as an expert in anything. At least when it comes to books, I don't. I'm I'm just here. I'm just here for fun. Um, that's all, I guess. Through great science fiction, we can make sense. Through science fiction, we can make sense of the modern world, provide clarity to our ultra-modern anxieties. We can skewer, lampoon, and satirize the modern world. We can daydream of a better future, or we can have we can make nightmarish prophecies about about cosmic pessimism and where we're going as a society. We can do a lot of things. One grievance that I have is that I have seen this like kind of normalized, that fantasy has great characters, agreed, whereas science fiction has great ideas. And it's like, I don't know how and who decided that those two things were mutually exclusive, but I am a character first reader, I suppose. I mean, that just sounds so fucking silly to me. Like, characters are part of the plot are part of the characters if the book is any fucking good. So, like, it's to compliment one is to compliment both, largely. But, you know, I guess I spend a lot of time doing character studies, and characters mean a lot to me. Yeah, no, I am just a character reader guy. I would read a book of Soul Catcher locked in a cell talking to herself for 500 pages. And the more I think about that, the more unironically, genuinely, like, does it sound beautiful to me? It sounds so good to me because she has 1,000 different voices. You can have a pretty lively discussion with yourself if you were Soul Catcher. But I think that sci-fi has great characters. At least the books on my list all have characters who I consider great. I think it's really unfair to say sci-fi has great ideas, that fantasy has great characters. From the outside looking in, dude, because I haven't always been in love with fantasy. I'm in love with it right now. But from the outside looking in, it didn't look like fantasy had great characters. It looked like fantasy had an endless amount of like the same 5 archetypes in different variations. Fantasy fans forget that, like, most of the world don't really know what the fuck fantasy is outside of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones film and television adaptations. I think we could actually name more sci-fi character archetypes than we can fantasy archetypes, or, you know, the true academic, the true scholar, the true galaxy brain would be like, oh, they're the same archetypes, just in different situations. Who cares? What am I saying at this point? Guys, we're here to go over my 10 favorite science fiction books. And my own list annoys me, by the way, because it's clear that I have like 2 favorite science fiction writers because they have fucking dominated the list. My list is a bit of the old cyberpunk supremacy to it, but I can't fake it. I cannot fake it. Starting with number 10, William Gibson's Count Zero. Love this book. It is the second part of the Sprawl trilogy, otherwise known as the Neuromancer trilogy. Count Zero is beautiful. So, cyberpunk means so much to me, just like grimdark does. Grimdark means a lot to me. Certain fantasy genres mean a lot to me. Cyberpunk, means just as much to me, and it's like the only thing that sci-fi has that is totally unique to sci-fi that means as much to me as grimdark and some high fantasy does. Cyberpunk, I just respond so well to the aesthetics, to the atmosphere, then especially to the characters who have to inhabit that atmosphere. Now, with a William Gibson type, I'm also a huge fan of, hold on a second, I have all of his books, but this was the only one that I could see from where I'm sitting. Raymond Chandler. So William Gibson does a lot of noir kind of things, and of course, kind of noir archetypes would occupy this ultra modern shadowy world full of glitchy character dynamics and neon lighted sex appeal. William Gibson kind of wrote Count Zero and Neuromancer, at least, the first 2 parts of his trilogy, his cyberpunk trilogy, with Raymond Chandler on the mind, for sure. And, of course, a Raymond Chandler kind of character, the noir, the hard-boiled detective fiction, had a great deal of cosmic pessimism to it, and also had a great deal of moral nihilism. And, I mean, and romantically, like, doomed philosophies and psychologies as well. And I think that applies beautifully to cyberpunk. And that's probably one of the reasons why I respond so heavily to cyberpunk. Count Zero is great. The Count himself is, I think, an adorable character. I love him so much. It's just so much fun, and it makes you think a lot of different stuff. And it does appeal to my more hopeful nihilistic qualities as well. And kind of the idea, like, cyberpunk, it's normally never like we're all doomed, we're all going to live inside of a computer, we're all fucking console cowboys. It's more like we will all become console cowboys, but there will always be some semblance of freedom, and it will be up to hackers to liberate those parts, the more advanced technologically that we get. And of course, the hacker culture, I love it being anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment. I love it just being punk rock and manifest. I think that the hacker or the console cowboy is one of the greatest heroes in all of literature. That archetype, I think it's so wonderful, because if you look around us right now, I feel like Python, like programming languages, that's kind of the predominant language of our world, of our reality. Even if we try not to live digitally, even if we try to go off the grid, the predominant language is Python, are these different programming languages, and you're almost better off learning that as a secondary language than any other one. And I think that even like a carpenter, I think that anybody should be learning programming languages in order to speak to systems that will otherwise oppress you. Right? We should all have the tools necessary to liberate freedom from our confined corporate circumstances. And I think that you kind of liberate that freedom by hacking the system itself. So I think everyone should learn a programming language. I don't know if I've gone on some sort of, lightly anarchist tangent, but I love how anti corporate cyberpunk is. I love how nihilistic cyberpunk is. I love how violent cyberpunk is. I love how philosophical cyberpunk is. I love how existentialist it ultimately becomes. And I love Count Zero, number 10. What's number 9? I guess is as good as mine. I just made this list. Hyperion. Yep. This is one of the ones that people talk about all the time. I think I'd actively tried to ignore reading it for the longest time because everybody would recommend it to me, but they wouldn't recommend it to me correctly. I love philosophy, I love psychology, but they made it sound like I would be sitting in on like a humanities lecture, and I really didn't want to do that. Like, I don't want to watch a fucking Tarkovsky movie ever again, to be honest with you. And they made it sound like it was along those lines. They made it sound like it was just a philosophy book in the disguise, the costume of science fiction. Luckily, when I read it, that wasn't the case, really. It is a smart book. It is a philosophical book. It is an interesting book with some interesting arguments, but more than anything else, it is a sci-fi book, and I love the sci-fi elements. I think the story is really good. I haven't read the two other parts or there's three other parts. Hyperion's a quartet, correct? No matter. I only read the first one. I might read the other installments in the series at some point, but the first one was, I thought, very good, and definitely good enough to be in my top 10. At number 8 is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I never owned this book. I kind of had this tradition that whenever I'd start like a new school, a new college, or move to a new place and got a new library card, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe was like a comfort book for me, and it'd be the first book I'd check out at each new place, each new setting that I'd went to with a new library. I think that the book's really funny. I think Douglas Adams is one of the best kind of comedic writers, in that through comedy you get to some true like a human truth that that would be impossible to encounter under even the most melodramatic circumstances. Like, through comedy, through a laugh, through a superbly constructed joke, you can really get to the heart of the matter of the human experience and the absurdity of that. It's a very absurd book. I think that it's full of wonderful, unforgettable characters, wonderful gags, great insight, great criticisms, great social commentary, and it's a great satire of basically not only every part of the sci-fi framework, but every part of the overly optimistic, rationally irrational, like human dreamer dreaming of the future. I think The Restaurant at the End of the Universe is the best in that entire series. I only think the first two are good, to be fair, but I think The Restaurant at the End of the Universe is like easy 5-star book. It's one of the best comedy books I've ever read, for sure. I think the jokes land more often than not, which is huge because there's like 4 jokes on a page. I think it's a brilliant book. At number 7 is Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey, part of the Expanse series, book number 3. I think by and large, this one's considered one of the weaker books in the entire Expanse series. Now, I like the Expanse. I like the series. I had a good time reading it. It was simple. It was very straightforward. There was a lot of clarity involved. Like, you understood everything that was happening for the most part, apart from the enduring mysteries that keep the long series readable, like interesting to read. I never watched the show. Maybe I will someday. I'm never quite. I'm never quite interested in watching adaptations of stuff that I've enjoyed, because I just find myself, complaining or just not enjoy. Like, I'd rather read the book. I don't want to watch the fucking television show. I heard it's good. I heard it's fine, and I heard they did a decent job adapting this part into one of the seasons. I think this is the best book in the entire Expanse. I think I like the setting. Without any spoilers, we're not really going to do spoilers in this video. I like the setting. I like the momentum. I like the characters a lot. A character called Melba. Is that her name? I thought she was, yeah, Melba. I think the best character in the entire Expanse, and here she's done extremely well. She's in another book called Nemesis Gate. She's in other books as well, but in Abaddon's Gate, the inner conflict, the inner turmoil, the psychopathy of her character. You know, I love my psychotic baddies. I think she was wonderful here, just so gripping. And Anna too. Like here, I think that we are interacting with religion, with annihilation, with a lot of different things beautifully. Abaddon's Gate, I think it's really exciting. I think every one of the main characters are at their peak and are very interesting. I like the vibe here so much. Uh, it's so great. Speaking of, did I just say the word annihilation? I think I did because I have number 7 or number 6 on my mind. I have number 6 on my mind. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I don't own a copy of this because it was my ex owned the book, and that's the copy that I read, and I haven't read it in years and years, but I loved the experience of it. It was like a better version of Tarkovsky's Stalker. It certainly has similarities to Tarkovsky's 1979 film Stalker. um, I don't even know where to begin with Annihilation, really. In Annihilation, I'll just put it as vaguely as I possibly can. Uh, I look at it as I'm given not simply a wasteland, but an amusement park, uh, a desiccated, petrified amusement park full of all of the dead philosophies that have failed the human race, and we're interacting with like all sorts of them, all sorts of ideas, all sorts of dead ideas and dead philosophies, dead memories, dead dreams, to come to some greater, more isolated and isolating truth, and a more beneficial one as well, but not entirely uh, rewarding. I think it's a really confrontational book. I think it's a deeply atmospheric work, and I think out of every book in this list, it is the scariest. I think Annihilation is scary. I think it's I think that the ideas that it eviscerates and the way that it eviscerates them, which is casually, quietly, meditatively, I find that horrific and I find that terrifying, especially if you read like entirely open and you're very open. You know, you're open to the experience. I have to highly recommend Annihilation at number 6. At number 5, Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. There are two pillars of the cyberpunk genre that everyone needs to read. One is Neuromancer by William Gibson, and the other is Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. They couldn't be more different. Right, they're almost moral, thematic, and tonal opposites. Now, Snow Crash is a satire. There's a lot of comedy here, but it's Neil Stevenson, so there's even more truth. There's even more bite. This is a book that would bite steel. I think that Snow Crash is extremely clever. I think it's extremely disturbing, and it really it really puts the punk back in cyberpunk. Now, Snow Crash, though, if you're looking for a great first cyberpunk book to read, I would not recommend Snow Crash. I would recommend, obviously, Neuromancer or When Gravity Fails. I would definitely not recommend Snow Crash because, at its heart, Snow Crash is also self satire. It's a self parody. It's parodying cyberpunk itself, and you should read it after you already have like a pretty decent understanding of the cyberpunk tropes, of the staples, of the philosophy of cyberpunk too, because what it's really after is harshly criticizing what cyberpunk's relationship with big corpo, with corporatocracy. And I think that that's at the heart of the hypocrisy that Neil Stevenson found just so goofy, goober funny, and made fun of in Snow Crash. Now, Snow Crash has a lot of amazing ideas. It is a badass book as well. It's also a very disturbing book. Like I said, there's a lot of disagreeable things within this. And thank God, because I'm sick of calling certain books or genres of books punk, and then it's just a sanitized fucking book. You know, like, okay, like there's going to be things that you disagree with in here, things that may repulse you to the point where you refuse reading it and think that I'm gross for even recommending it. There are absolutely things like that in here. But like, why? Okay, we can't call everything punk. Like, what the fuck is silk punk? Who's the brain dead jock idiot who decided to call the Dandelion Dynasty silk punk? What the fuck are we doing, guys? Cyberpunk. Punk should be anti-authoritarian, anti-consumer, not anti-consumer. I'm so sorry. It should be anti-authoritarian, anti-corporate. I mean, it should be constantly attacking social mores, social values, morality. It should always be moving apart from society. Like the least punk thing is conformity. So every single great thing that has punk in the name should be nonconformist, should be anti-society in a pretty large way. I think that punk is more about, you know, watching the world burn in more ways than one. I don't know who decided that everyone who is punk needs to believe in the same extremely sanitized and honestly extremely corporatized set of philosophies, set of belief systems. I think that's gross. I think it's weird. I think that punk should be kind of offensive, should kind of try to be fucking disagreeable, and try to never be sanitized and try to never be overwhelmed by corporatocracy and never co-opted by it. Anyone who tells you that this genre is punk and they might as well be wearing a bow tie, or their book's all about how we need to accept everybody, like, no, punk is more so about about providing jet fuel to the misfit who will just moon the fucking universe. Like that's punk. That's actual punk. Punk isn't actually about conformity. Misfits should never want to be sanitized. Misfits should never want to be normalized. And any subgenre that calls itself punk should never want to be corporatized, should never want to be normalized, and should never try to be seen as digestible. And Snow Crash, I think it's still a book that's confrontational. I think it's still a book with a lot of bite. I think it's still a punk book, and it might be the most cyberpunk book out of the entire genre if we're looking at it purely as a movement rather than as a literary style. As a movement, the fact that it's also self-critical, that it not only parodies itself, but completely insults its own framework of cyberpunk, that to me is also punk. That to me is pretty amazing. I think the philosophy here is great. I think that like where you would have to do a big study is why this book that I think is so full of punk ethos, I think it's probably Silicon Valley's most favorite book as well. You know, we'd have to, yeah, like how did someone read Snow Crash and see the metaverse and go, I want to make that real? You know, I don't normally talk about media literacy, but when very rich and powerful and brilliant technocrats, technology geniuses, you know, like when they have media literacy, oh, we all feel the effect of that. I don't think you're ever supposed to read Snow Crash and be inspired to do anything other than ding dong ditch at the White House. That's like the only thing I think it should make you want to do, honestly, because it's pure cyberpunk and it's great. Okay, that was a bit longer than I wanted to be. Number 4. Yep, The Other Pillar, Neuromancer. It's brilliant. It's got that hard-boiled, nihilistic noir edge to it. I think that Molly Millions is the greatest character in this entire genre. Molly Millions to me is like she's like on the level with Soulcatcher. Molly Millions has just so much like visual power as you're reading the book. She has like so much presence. She has so much atmosphere. She's so badass. She has so many complexities, so many sophistications. I want her to protect me. I want her to step on me. I want to follow her into the dark. You know, I want to do so many things with and to Molly Millions because I think that she also kind of symbolizes like best encapsulates and expresses uh, a philosophy that I have a lot of affection for, which is a pretty dangerous philosophy, a very confrontational philosophy. But at the end of the day, it's an anti corporate philosophy. She's a street samurai, and it doesn't get much cooler than that. All right. I think that, like, in Molly Millions, we see the most beautiful character in all of science fiction, inside and out. Like, there's, okay, in Johnny Mnemonic, which is a short story, in Burning Chrome, in Johnny Mnemonic, where Molly Millions first appears, she, they're being minor spoilers for Johnny Mnemonic, but you'll live. It's fine. They're being like hunted by this corporate assassin, and Molly Millions is protecting Johnny Mnemonic, who has himself become like a data bank, like a data. People put their secrets and stuff into his head, and he stores it there. And she's protecting him. And when the confrontation actually happens with the corporate assassin, who is like, oh, so grotesque, to be honest with you, they're with like at that point, Molly and Johnny have just talked to the talking genius dolphin, techno dolphin. I'll just let that rest there in your brain. And they're with this like weird cultish group of people who live on rooftops and like have used the technology around them in a tribal sort of way. Like they've formed tribes around a certain use of the technology. And like as Molly and this corporate assassin fight each other, Gibson puts it so well because she's hitting all these different spots on the ground and the walls that provide a lot of sound, like drums, and it kind of makes this corporate assassin just self-destruct in a way. And William Gibson puts one of the most beautiful lines I've ever read in any book, the most badass ones too. Molly Millions, she killed him with culture shock. What Molly Millions represents in the Neuromancer trilogy, in the work of William Gibson, she represents death by culture shock. And what is that culture? And what is the shock? The culture is that which you can never contain, that which could never conform, that which has been weaponized, and its sole purpose, its sole goal is destroying the state. Like, that's so fucking cool to me. What is the culture shock? The culture shock is nonconformity, the misfits, the weaponized losers, the beaten and forgotten prostitutes of the future ghosts are here to kill you with culture shock because you could never fucking get it, man. Neuromancer is very important to me, and that's at number 4. Now we're at honorable mentions. I was just holding up Burning Chrome. It's a collection of short stories, but you get some amazing ones here. Like Johnny Mnemonic, I was just talking about, one of the best things I've ever read. One of William Gibson's best. And there's another one in here that he wrote with someone else. Oh, John Shirley, called The Belonging Kind. It's one of the best examinations of like hookup culture and bar culture that I've ever read, and I related to it way more than I should have when I first read it. I also loved Burning Chrome itself. Burning Chrome and Johnny Mnemonic are the two stories here that actually take place in the sprawl, the cityscape that is where his primary trilogy takes place. But there's a lot of good stuff here. New Rose Hotel, Winter Market. I mean, I can just read them all. They're only like maybe 1 or 2 duds. The rest are just absolutely beautiful. So, honorable mention, Burning Chrome by William Gibson. Another honorable mention is The Sirens of Titan. I do like Kurt Vonnegut a little bit, not as much as a lot of other people, but I appreciate him so much. And The Sirens of Titan has always been my favorite of his books. I think it was his second book, but I think it's very clever, and I think it's funny, and I think it's extremely insightful and inventive. So Sirens of Titan, and then let's not get off William Gibson too quickly, because Virtual Light certainly deserves to be here. Part of the Bridge trilogy, which is what he followed up the Neuromancer Sprawl trilogy with. Virtual Light is awesome. I haven't read the other 2 books in the Virtual Light Bridge trilogy. I just haven't done that yet, and I would like to, but Virtual Light is very good. It is cyberpunk, but it's also a bit more grounded. Not just thematically and technologically, but philosophically grounded as well. I think it has more in common with an Elmore Leonard novel than with the Raymond Chandler that we were used to. So it's not as morally complex, but it still is moral and complex in its own right. Another honorable mention, Neil Stephenson, Cryptonomicon. This book took me ages to get through. That's why it's not in the top 10. I couldn't, with confidence, put a book that took me like 8 months to get through and me putting it down for weeks at a time during that period. I couldn't with good conscience put that in a top 10. I wouldn't put you through that. But if you do make it through this book, it's a fascinating it's a fascinating work, and it is a highly rewarding work if you can get to the end, but it is difficult to get to the end. Neil Stephenson is more of a postmodern sort of writer, so, and I can appreciate postmodernism in post after the fact. I can appreciate postmodernism more than I can appreciate it in the moment. Like Snow Crash had these chapters where you knew Neil was just fucking with you with pointless info dumps, but sometimes it's hard to tell, and I couldn't tell sometimes if Neil Stephenson was just fucking with me through Cryptonomicon. It's more genuine than I'm making it out, and it's a lot more profound than most of the work that I've read from him. Cryptonomicon, this is basically the Bible for a certain type of tech bro, and it's actually really, really good. It's very, very good. It's a bit. I am almost smart enough to understand everything he was talking about, but still not smart enough. Maybe you're smarter than me, and you'll love Cryptonomicon. You'll get through it in like 5 days, and I'll be very impressed with you. Another honorable mention would be, yes, The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. I went through a big Philip K. Dick phase in my teen years, and I read basically all of his books, and The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, I think, was one of the first that I read, and it was also one of the most enduring. I thought about it a long time after I was done. I haven't read it in a long time. It might make a emergence on my top 10 if I were to reread it, but I don't remember it clearly enough to tell you that it's top 10 quality, but I do remember that I was blown away. Also, Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. I think that's Clarke's best book. I'm not the biggest Clarke fan. I think he's a little overrated. I think that the stuff that we love about 2001 is purely Kubrick. But Rendezvous with Rama is I like the mysterious aspects of his books in general, but Rama just had the most grip on me, and I think that Arthur C. Clarke is certainly worth mentioning. And while I don't join in, I don't relate to like how everyone views him as one of the ultimate pillars of science fiction as a whole. I do see Rendezvous with Rama as an essential book that basically everyone who's deeply interested in science fiction literature should probably read. Speaking of pillars of the science fiction community, Asimov's Foundation is very good just in general. It did not make my top 10. I haven't read it in a very long time, and I think about it less and less as time goes on, but that really shouldn't take too much away from the book. I definitely deserve to mention it here, or I definitely should mention it here. It deserves to be mentioned honorably. Another book is When Gravity Fails. I mentioned that book in passing earlier. It's a wonderful cyberpunk novel that's not written by William Gibson or Neil Stephenson, so there are more writers in that field. When Gravity Fails, I think, is a very good kind of different take on cyberpunk tropes. And I don't think anyone would let me get away with saying that Naked Lunch was science fiction, but that's the genre I put it in, classify it as in my brain. I love Naked Lunch. Burroughs is awesome. Naked Lunch is very good. If I could get away with calling it sci-fi, then I would call it sci-fi. But if I call Burroughs sci-fi, then I'd probably have to call, fucking Gravity's Rainbow sci-fi or Infinite Jest sci-fi, and I don't want to have those kind of conversations. But those are the honorable mentions. At number 3, top 3, ladies and gentlemen, of this, I think, extremely unfocused top 10 video is A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. As I just said, went through a big Philip K. Dick period of my teens, and this is the one book that I read more than once over the years. I related heavily to it. I have a kind of sordid past, being a street kid, being a punk kid, and being a heroin abuser. I'm clean now, no longer a junkie or whatever, but A Scanner Darkly definitely makes me re-examine those moments of my life. Not morbidly either, which I appreciate, but more with a sort of self mockery, self awareness, and the paranoia that always seem to seize those types of friend groups. I think is beautifully explored within A Scanner Darkly. But more than anything, I think it's one of the best examinations of friend groups who that are dominated by drug use and dominated by paranoia of corporations, paranoia of feds, paranoia of the future. I think this is an extremely paranoid book, but I think that the paranoia paints its junky characters in the most philosophically astute lights possible, and it's a vibrancy that I can relate to, and I love the characters here, and I love what it says about drug use here. I think it's really interesting. Number 2, Neil Stephenson. As I told you, I have 2 favorite science fiction writers, and they've dominated this list. Number 2, Neil Stephenson, The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. Oh my God, I love. Hey, it's right there. Hold on. Dickens. I love Dickens, the old curiosity shop. This is a Dickens book starring a character called Little Nell. Well, there's another Little Nell here. This book is highly Dickensian. It's a Dickensian cyberpunk novel. I think what it says about society and about social stratification, class stratification, is enormously important and enormously provocative. I think what it says about education, about the youth, about cyberpunk as a whole is also extremely just provocative and incredibly fascinating to me. This is much better than Snow Crash. I think that this is a very serious sort of rumination, exploration of a certain kind of anxious, self-destructive future of a suicidal culture. I think the Diamond Age is absolutely amazing. I flew through this book. I just gobbled it up, man. It was so fucking good. Oh my God. And like it goes into so many things here. Mm, mm, nature, nurture, technology, human contact. It goes into fucking everything here. The connections that we make, the rebellions that are inspired, the carnage, the cruelty, and the victories. The messiahs. Oh my God. The Diamond Age. Obviously, I love this book. I can't even articulate the reasons why. It's got my tongue here. I can't really tell you. It's just beautiful. Number 2, The Diamond Age. Number 1, William Gibson, Mona Lisa Overdrive, the 3rd part of the Sprawl trilogy. Now, I've talked about this trilogy a lot on this list because every single part of the trilogy is featured prominently within my top 10. I'm not shameful about it. I don't regret it because it's one of the best series that I've ever read. My favorite book series is The Black Company, but like number 2 would be a sci-fi series, and it'd probably be The Sprawl, the Neuromancer trilogy. The characters are outrageous. The fucking philosophy is extraordinary, deeply compelling. And in this book, I think we get the best characters in the whole series. Of course, Molly's in this one as well, but the most compelling characters here is a little girl called Kamiko, and also Mona herself. Now, that's the character who, when I first met her in this book, I realized, oh, this is going to be something that I'm going to be in love with. She plays a futuristic prostitute in Florida. I am from Florida. The way that Gibson talks about a cyberpunk Florida, it just seems so accurate, so apt, and so unbelievably nauseating. But there's this part, and it doesn't really have anything to fucking do with with sci-fi motifs, with the future, with technology, blah blah blah. The book overall does, but the part I'm talking about doesn't. It's just Mona talking about how she like used to have fun getting drunk with this other older prostitute, and they just get drunk and they walk down the street staggering left and right, and she'd call them the silver walks because the lights would kind of pass by in a silver way, glittered off the puddles in a silver fashion. The silver walks where she felt like um when you're completely dissociating, when you're completely detached from your body, when you're that drunk that you feel like you're floating down the street, that's a silver walk. When the nihilism just starts to feel elating rather than suffocating, rather than soul crushing. And then there, I realized I wasn't just reading a great science fiction book. I'm reading a great book about philosophy, about atmosphere, about the human condition, about human behavior, and about the human experience. That's what I'm reading when I'm reading Mona Lisa Overdrive. And I do think that compared to Neuromancer and Count Zero, the plot is not only provides the reader with the most clarity, but also with the most mysteries simultaneously. I think it's incredibly well plotted. I think that the characters are full of pathos, each and every single one of them. But Mona is physical poetry. Mona herself in Mona Lisa Overdrive is the heart stealer, the heartbreaker, the heart taker, and I think that that her kind of nihilism is so cuddly, yet so damaged and defective that I couldn't help but love it so much. Mona Lisa Overdrive, #1 favorite sci-fi book. So as you see, I haven't read a lot of the essential ones. I haven't read a lot of the books that most people say that you need to read if you like sci-fi. But I think that I like different things about science fiction than most other people do, just like fantasy. I guess we all like to think we're really unique in the way that we read and the way that we interact with characters. But I do think I'm more realistic than most. I do think that I like books for reasons that aren't shared by a lot of other people. I can like a popular book, but I can like that popular book for a reason that most people don't give a fuck about, is what I'm saying. So when I'm looking at sci-fi as a whole genre, I'm not really interested in questions like, are we alone in the universe? Obviously. Very few books in my top 10 were even interested in interacting with that question, really. Some were, but I don't think most weren't. The ones that meant the most to me weren't. Like, I'm not really interested in, are we alone in the universe? I'm not really interested in time travel. I'm not really interested in these things as actual questions worth daydreaming about. I'm interested in the characters and how the characters interact with those ideas. And that's where I go back to the beginning of this video, where I completely disagree that sci-fi has ideas while fantasy has characters. I think sci-fi has an overwhelming amount of amazing characters, but most of the sci-fi characters don't make you feel good. They're not about comforting you. Molly Millions, Mona, Nell from the Diamond Age, or even Hero from Snow Crash. They're not necessarily here to comfort you. They're here to challenge and confront you. They're here to kind of wake you up to the dystopic corporate your overlords. They're here to wake you up to the fact that you are some kind of fucking wage slave peon in somebody else's fun little board game. You're just a piece about to be forcefully, like, forced off the fucking board. You're just a piece to them. You're just a fucking pawn. So what I find most interesting about sci-fi is, yeah, they are ideas, but ideas without a great character is just an idea. That's just time travel. That's just aliens, that's just parallel universes. Ideas mean nothing unless a character charges those ideas. And I think maybe that's also why I love cyberpunk so much, because the ideas of cyberpunk, they aren't just these broad questions about humanity. Like, cyberpunk doesn't give a fuck if God exists, and I have to respect it so much for not falling into that really boring question that almost all sci-fi devotes so much time to. Cyberpunk doesn't give a fuck if God exists. This is a post asking that stupid question, God, timeline. This is a post asking that stupid question, timeline. It's not just post God, it's post Nietzsche, it's post all of it. Like, who gives a fuck? The ideas of cyberpunk are about hacking the system of your everyday life, hacking the corporate chains that keep you pulverized into senility. The ideas in cyberpunk are about liberating the freedom within your environment, taking it back, going under the radar, uh, using the tools of the oppressors to destroy them. That's what cyberpunk's about. So that idea in and of itself is radical. Now, the reader could become radicalized if a great character can charge a radical idea. And that's what you get with great cyberpunk. You get something that could actually influence you to make physical, demonstrable change. I think that's sci-fi. It's only about ideas if you only read, I think, the most popular sci-fi books. Maybe I might be talking out of my ass, but like if you see sci-fi as just about time travel, parallel universes, and aliens, then like maybe that's just ideas. Space bugs, maybe that's just an idea. I'm sure that there's some symbolism involved in everything, but there are these kind of fringe subgenres like cyberpunk that uh, that is more about radicalizing the reader, satirizing our modern world, and kind of giving misfits the tools and inspiration to be the absolute to be absolute paragons of nonconformity. That's what I love about cyberpunk. So those are my top 10 sci-fi books. Man, I feel like this video was just all over the place, but hey, if you stuck around, then you must be a little damaged like me, a little psychopathic. So subscribe, like, hang out with me. I'm like this in every video. I don't know how anyone watches me. Not a lot of people do, but I'm just shocked that anyone does. I hope you found some good books here, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. That's about it, though. Bye for now.